I just built this full game using GPT 5.6 and Fable 5. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did it, but most importantly, which one was more cost effective, which one did a better job, and how long each one took. Because if you're considering using either of these models right now, they are the best in the business at agentic coding. Which one should you really use? Okay, so I've got cursor set up here and I've got 3 panels, my file explorer, I have Claude, and then the ChatGPT or GPT CLI running here, the Codex CLI. The reason I'm using the Codex CLI and not the Codex Visual Studio Code plugin, which is what I would normally use, is because at the time of recording, GPT 5.6 is not yet available within the Codex app, for me at least. I think by the time you're watching this, that may be different. So I'm just using the CLI instead because I can access it through there. What I've done is created this very detailed prompt explaining the idea of Doodle Dodge. Doodle Dodge is the name of the game that I wanted to build, which is a web endless runner. It's inspired by Temple Run, so you continue running as a character on a lined piece of paper with 3 lines. You can swipe up to go up a line and then swipe down to go down a line. There's an eraser that comes in on the left hand side and obstacles that come in on the right. The eraser is trying to erase you and then you have to try to dodge the obstacles and then collect points and whatever. So I included possibly as much detail as I could with this game, but then left enough ambiguity, such as I didn't say anything about the power-ups. I wanted it to come up with ideas on its own. I didn't say anything regarding collecting different points as well. I just let it come up with whatever on its own. Same with the game over. I didn't tell it anything about animations or how to position the actual user or the hero in our case in the game. So I left that ambiguity open because I wanted to see how the thought process was for both Fable 5 and for GPT 5.6. Now, I also set up a Supabase project because I wanted to use a database to hold the high scores. Now, this is very reminiscent of if you were building a real app in production, you may want it to be connected to a database on the back end. And in our case here, I wanted to do that so that if this was hosted somewhere, people could save their high scores. And that was one of the most specific technically complex portions of this assignment for GPT 5.6 and Fable 5, because I wanted to see whether or not it could go out and find information on how to connect to the database using the keys that I provided to it, and then go out and do that for me. And I'll show you which one was able to actually get that done, but I won't show you exactly which one built which. So I also created 2 folders, the GPT folder and the Claude folder, for each of them to work in. All right, I got GPT 5.6 to do its development first, and then I terminated or deleted the database. Okay, so I also have 2 folders, GPT and Claude, so that they don't step on each other's toes. One GPT 5.6 worked in GPT and then Claude worked in Claude. So both projects are separate and I can run them at the same time. And I also want to take a look really quickly at the runtime for each one. So Fable actually took about 40 minutes to complete. You'll see it here. And the token usage was about 110,000 tokens output. A lot of the token usage came from the thinking process for Fable, and it ended up using in total for about close to 5 million tokens and costing about $21. Now, in contrast, the GPT 5.6 ended up costing about $5.62, so much less, and the token usage was about the same actually. So you can see here the output tokens is a lot less, but the input and thinking tokens are around the same. So in total, you can see here the GPT ended up costing a lot less. So you can see that GPT 5.6 costed a lot less in our case. And the runtime for the GPT build was about 30 minutes. So a good amount less in times. I think in comparison to Fable 5, at least from the documentation, GPT 5.6 is faster, the latency is less, and it is more efficient in terms of cost. So we're seeing that reflected here. Now, a more reasonable comparison would be Opus 4.8 to Fable 5 to GPT 5.6 because of the cost similarities, but performance for GPT 5.6 is touted to be very close to Fable. So I wanted to test these two, but of course you can run this with Opus 4.8 and your costing would look about the same, depending on how efficient Opus was able to build it. Okay, so I've got them both booted up here. I'll show you the first one. I'm not gonna say which one is which. You can kind of guess, and then towards the end, I'll tell you exactly which one is which. So this is the first one. There is actually, you can't tell, but from the time I'm clicking my keyboard for up and down, there's a small piece of latency, a small amount of latency latency that is incorporated. I just collected a power up here too, which it came up with on its own for increasing my points 2 times. I also see that it did a pretty good job of trying to replicate the background for it to be kind of a notebook type style, but there are these weird artifacts at the top of the notebook with like shaking heads. It almost looks like stick figures at the top. So one thing that I really like is the scribble animation that the pencils come in on the right hand side. It also looks like the pencil that was recreated here looks very accurate to a pencil itself. So I did tell it that if you hit something, the eraser should come into the screen, and then if you hit it again, it should actually erase you. And you'll see here that actually if I type in my name, I can click submit, but you'll see that online submission was unavailable. I dug into this a little bit more, and I found out that the agent that built this wasn't able to get the Supabase connection working, so you can't actually see the high scores. And so yeah, the next one I'll show you is this one here. So we can click play. There's no latency with, by the way, like with me tapping up and down on my keyboard. And so everything seems to be working a lot smoother. The animations here actually seem to be much more pleasant. It feels more responsive. There also seems to be this parallax effect with some elements in the background moving a little bit faster than other elements. And I do appreciate the art style in this a little bit more because it looks a little bit more doodly specific. Some of the elements as well kind of are floating a little bit above. And also there's a lot of particle effects here too, which is very cool. The one thing I don't really like is there's these scribbles in the background that are a little distracting, and they look like, you know, uneven lines or whatever. But and also the person or the stick person, it looks like it recreated this as different frames. So it probably created with CSS or something and then stitch those frames together. The one thing I don't like is it looks a little creepy. It doesn't scale well, but of course that's a small thing. You can continue prompting it. I do love this little animation of the eraser coming on the left hand side. It follows you really nicely. It floats really nicely. The animation fidelity is just quite good. And I'll go ahead and end my thing here. I'm doing too well actually in this game. It's pretty addicting. So I'll go ahead and end the run here, and you'll see the eraser actually has this little animation that comes up and erases you. So I go ahead and type in Emmett and click the leaderboard, and it actually works. And you can verify in the database here that in the table these are in fact the correct ones. This is the one I got here in the run that I just did, and Pencil Pete is still beating me, so I'm gonna have to put in a little bit more time here to beat Pencil Pete. So there is actually a little thing here you probably already saw, but my name before when I was testing is Emmett Claude. So yes, if you guessed already, this one here was developed by Claude, which I think did a better job, Fable 5, and this one was developed by GPT-5.6. However, I do think that GPT-5.6 was a lot closer in fidelity and output than many people may assume based on it being a quarter of the price of the Fable run. So I think the overview here and the big takeaway for me is that if you have something that you need, or a very long horizon task that you need to get done and you want it to be done really well without having to kind of supervise or reprompt as time goes on, Fable 5 seems to be like unparalleled and unbeaten at this point. GPT 5.6 can get you basically almost the entire way there. I just think it maybe needs a little bit more fine tuning and prompting. The other little tip that I'll give you just so that you know, like I put these both in max, but you can obviously put it in ultra code if you wanted to. GPT and ultra code might end up being, or its like highest effort level might end up being even cheaper than Fable 5's ultra code, depending on how many tokens it's using. I also found that GPT 5.6 does a better job of being more efficient. I think it's the codex harness that it's using just prioritizes efficiency. So you can try GPT 5.6 for your builds. I think it does a really good job. I think Fable 5 does a slightly better job in terms of visual fidelity, being able to complete successfully very complex tasks that have multiple different moving parts. And I'm excited to continue trying this out. So if you've given Fable 5 or GPT 5.6 a shot, drop a comment below. I want to see which one's working best for you. And that's it. You can see Fable 5 does a much better job of getting something that's really usable that you can put in front of someone to actually kind of play in this scenario. But GPT 5.6 is not far behind, and a lot of people are saying that Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 have similar performance, and I think that's true to some degree. but I think GPT 5.6 should be more commonly compared to Opus 4.8 because their costs are a lot more similar. So I think price per performance, GPT 5.6 wins hands down. But if you're looking for the very best performance at any cost possible, Fable 5 might be the way to go. So if you like this breakdown, drop a like and subscribe below. I'll see you in the next one.